When I was younger, I was terrified of everything. Back my freshman year of high school, I was going through quite a bit, and I didn't really know who I was, what I wanted, where I was trying to go in life. I was struggling with friends. I had just gotten out of a horrible first relationship. It was a rough time. During that time, I started trying to figure out how to be the type of person I wanted to be. This was back, you know, 2018, and I was spending a ton of time every day watching YouTube, looking at self-help, trying to read more books, just trying to figure out who I wanted to be. And I realized I was terrified. I was scared of everything to a point that it was insane. I was terrified to talk to people I knew, people I had been friends with for years. I was terrified to be open with them, to be honest about how I was feeling. Instead of trying to have deeper connections with people, I just pushed everyone away because I was too scared of what would happen if I was actually close with them. This continued on for a while, and as I got older and I was realizing I was missing out on things because I just couldn't be close with people, I realized I needed to have a change. I needed to find a way to push myself outside my comfort zone. And that's when I discovered this channel, Yes Theory. Now, Yes Theory today is a far cry from what it used to be. It's a lot more reactionary, and, the Mr. Beastification of it has really been a loss to society, I'll say. But back then, their videos were all about how do you become the best version of yourself? How do you figure out who you are, and how do you get to that point? How do you discover who you are? And their whole idea was that by saying yes to everything in life, you could figure out what you were actually scared of. You could conquer your fears, and you could move through life as a more confident person. I took that advice and I ran with it. As a 15-year-old who was terrified of everything, I started just saying yes to things. And it sucked. It was horrible. I would put myself in situations that I didn't want to be in. I would commit myself to things that I didn't want to do. And I pushed myself to have conversations with people that I didn't want to have. But something weird started happening. I started feeling less scared, less anxious. I stopped caring what other people thought as much. And I want to be completely frank, this was not a quick process. This isn't a overnight, suddenly things were better and I felt amazing. This was months of slow, difficult, hard work, trying to figure out what I was actually scared of, or what had I been making too big a deal for too long of an amount of time. I think it was, let's see, August of that year. It had been, 2 months now of me trying this Yes Theory thing, of trying to push myself into a place that I had never been before. And it was the first time I noticed things were coming out of it. I noticed that I wasn't scared. Specifically, there was a day where I was at band practice. Yeah, I was a band nerd. And it was my first year doing it. And I remember sitting there being too scared to play loudly in front of everyone else, lest I make a mistake and they judge me for it. But then there was this one day where I was like, no, I've practiced this. Like, I know I can do this. I know I'm going to play it well. And instead of playing it quietly and just trying to hide, I played loudly. I let myself play confidently, and I played horribly wrong. It was not good, but I was confident in it. And I remember the band director said, okay, not quite it, but I like the confidence. That was the first time in years anybody had ever actually complimented me on my confidence. This saying yes to things was starting to lead to new friendships as well. During that time, I talked to people who were years older than me, that usually I would have been way too scared to even approach. And they became friends. I went out after band practice with them and had so much fun doing things that a year ago me never could have even imagined. Yeah, it was terrifying, and maybe going out with older people after band practice isn't for everyone, but for me, it felt like I was finally a part of a group. Like I had finally found my way. Fast forward a little bit more, and me and my parents' relationship had been a bit contentious for a little while. Not as close as I would have liked, and a bit more angry than I think any of us would have liked. For years, I'd kind of just sat there taking it and not said anything. And you're a kid, there's some amount of stuff you can't control, but I finally sat there, looked at them and said, hey, we need to talk. And I found that courage in me to say, yes, I am going to have this conversation. Yes, this needs to happen, and to hold my own. And my relationships with them started to improve. Things got better in a way that they just never did before because I was always too scared to say how I was feeling. This whole idea of letting fear rule everything you do, it's something that roots itself in us early. And then we struggle for years and years to push off. But you don't have to be scared. It is okay to be wrong and to be wrong in front of other people. It's okay to be scared. But it's also okay to take that fear and to do it anyway. You don't have to hide from the fear. You can just embrace it. I think the best example of this, and I might have told this story on this channel before, that same year, I went on a trip with my friends. And on this trip, we would go out in the woods, and there's this abandoned barn. In the middle of the night, walking out, pitch black outside, to this abandoned barn in the middle of the woods. It was not the smartest plan in the world, but we did it anyway. And we're there, and we think we heard something inside the barn. My friends don't want to go in at all, but the one friend who actually owned the property said, no, I need to go in there and make sure there's not someone hurt in there. Well, no one volunteered to go in there with him. And so he starts walking while we're all standing back, terrified. Like, we don't want to have anything to do with this. We're too scared. And I'm sitting there like, are you seriously gonna let your friend walk into this dangerous place by himself? You're not even gonna try and help? You're just gonna let him do it? What type of coward are you? I had never felt that type of fight inside of myself before. Half of me pulling myself closer, like, no, go in there. You're going in there. You have to help your friend. The other half saying, no, I can't. I won't do this. I'm too scared. I remember the exact moment that it felt like I was splitting in two. One half of me hiding and refusing to go in, and the other half running in. And that half won out. I remember following my friend in there and him going, what are you doing? I said, I couldn't let you go alone. There ended up being nothing in there. But that moment, that quick instant of, I'm not letting you do this by yourself, it was the biggest instant of me facing my fear I had ever felt in my life. The rush of adrenaline, the happiness and the hope that I got from that moment was amazing. That whole trip was something I never would have done before, except I faced my fears and I went to something that terrified me and I did it anyway. I've talked a lot on this channel about moving past fear, about doing things scared, and about not letting what everyone else says hold you back. But the best way to start that is with yourself. Say yes to yourself. Let yourself be scared and then do it anyway. You'll be surprised at what you're able to do. Shortly after this trip, whenever I got back home, I felt more alive than I'd ever felt in my life. More so than I think anyone has ever felt, to be honest. And I was sitting at my house, and there was this girl who I'd had a crush on for quite a while, who I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go in and start texting her. 10 days later, we were dating. 6 years later, we're married. If I hadn't said yes, going on that trip and facing my fears, if I hadn't started that chain reaction months ago, trying to find my way out of this fear that I had let build up inside of myself, probably never would have met my wife. Anyway, take care.